Chris here from MN Outdoor Boys. We're getting into mid-November here, and here in Minnesota things are starting to wrap up with deer hunting, and we just thought that a good way to keep our deer fed and in the area over the winter would be putting together some of these deer feeders. So this deer feeder right here, this is one of the finished ones. We're going to show you how to build one. This one's made out of 6-inch PVC pipe, and if you fill it with corn, it'll hold about 35 pounds of corn. And we just filled it with just regular corn we picked up at our local Menards, you know, $7 a bag, not too bad. So yeah, we're going to show you how to build one of these, how to put it together, some little tips about it, and what kind of worked well for us and what we figured that we had to do different. So first things first is we're using this Schedule 30 pipe. It's a little bit cheaper and a little bit less weight. And what we had was, we had a 10-foot chunk of it, and it had this bell end on it, so we had to cut that off. So that took about 5 inches off. And then we cut that, we ended up getting it into 3 sections, and they're 38¼ inches long roughly. So that's the pipe. Some of the other things you'll need one of these 6-inch Ys, and then you'll need a drain, and you can see the black mark on there. I'll get into that a little bit later, but you'll need a drain for the bottom so moisture doesn't build up in the bottom if it rains. And then you'll need a 6-inch PVC cap for the top like we got here. And then just some other stuff. We went all stainless steel hardware on this one. So this is a 2-inch wide U-bolt, and what this is for, it goes on the back of here just so we can put it onto the fence post. And 2-inch wide works pretty good. If you go any smaller, you won't be able to get it on the fence post. If you're going to strap it onto a tree, you won't have to worry about the size so much if you're going to use a ratchet strap or what have you. Some other things here is an eye bolt, and these are all 5/8 or 5/16 thread. The eye bolt we got goes right in the top here, and we'll go into how we drilled that out and whatnot. And then some other stuff we got is we just picked up some locking nuts, the nylock nuts, and so we have one on the inside of the eye bolt and then one on each side of the inside of the U-bolt. And then so the locking nuts, you can set your different depths and stuff like that. One thing I wanted to say about each of these is the thread on these is they're both pretty long. If you can find them shorter, go for it, but we just couldn't, they didn't have any stock of anything shorter at our Menards store, but they're all 5/16 thread, and they really don't have to be this long, but this is just what we got. And then another thing is you'll obviously need your wrenches. These are 1/2-inch wrenches to do the nuts on the 2 parts. You know, your tape measure you'll need a file, and then sandpaper, or we just use this little sanding wheel that we put on our drill, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. You might need a hammer to get the drain down into the bottom of there. Also, the drill you'll need. And then, final thing is the paint. People do it with paint. They've also used, I've seen people wrap them with duct tape, but you know, as far as we're concerned, the paint's going to be durable enough for us, and it's going to save you a ton of time. And yeah, so the paint's just easy. That's Rust-Oleum Camouflage. You don't have to get necessarily the Rust-Oleum Camouflage. You can get any flat or satin color just so it's not shiny. So yeah, let's get into how we're gonna build this thing. First of all, so this is our original drain that we have marked with the black line here. And then this is our modified one that'll go into the bottom. What we did is when you buy them, this one is a little too wide for it to fit in how we want it. So what we did is we went around with our jigsaw, and then that's why we have our file, so we can file it down to make it fit in just right. And then after you cut it, you'll have just this little ring like this that'll come off from the outside. You don't want to cut too much off of the inside of your line, just because you don't want it to be too loose. If it does end up being too loose for you, you can easily fix that. Just either run a couple screws in underneath it or some silicone, whatever you can find that'll work. So after you cut off the edge of your drain and you get it to fit, you know, it's gonna take you a couple times to get it to fit just right into here. You'll have to lay it on here, file off what doesn't work. This one we've already done all that work just for time's sake. But after you get that filed in, you're gonna want this upside down, because this is gonna go in the bottom. So if you see here, you know, your tube will come down here and the deer will eat the corn out of here. So this will be the bottom side. You're just gonna take it and set it in there, and it's gonna be a pressure fit into there. And then that's why we got the hammer here. You're gonna wanna just kind of hammer it in there until it gets flush with that ring in there. And if it gets too stiff, that's why you got your file. Just file some off on each edge and you'll be good. So after you got your drain in there, you'll flip her over, and then simply just take your cut piece of pipe and set her in here. You know, there's not really a lot of need. There's no need for the PVC glue on here, just because it's a friction fit and it's tight enough and you don't have to worry about that. So you take that, push that all the way down, and there's that. You're already halfway done. You know, the hard part's out of the way. Getting this to fit is probably the hardest part. Next thing you're going to want to do is take your cap, and you're just going to want to measure across a couple ways and find the middle of it, and then drill the 5/16 hole for your eye bolt. So with your eye bolt, I already have the nylock nut on here. What we did is there's an original regular nut on there, and we just slid that all the way up to the top. You're gonna just slide it in the hole and put your lock nut on there. There's probably about, I'd say, 2.5 inches of thread still sticking out of the inside of there. That's not gonna interfere with anything, but you're gonna have to crank down all that way. So come over, get your 1/2 inch wrench and crank it on. All right guys, so we got our eye bolt in there all tightened down, and like I said, there's about 2 inches inside of the cap here. It's not a big deal, it's not going to interfere with anything. Yeah, so we got that all sanded on the inside so it fits on there good. The next step is going to be taking your U-bolt and putting it on for the back. If you're going to attach it to a tree or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily need the U-bolt. You could do like 2 eye bolts on the sides and run a strap around the tree. But we're using the 2-inch wide U-bolt just so we can use the fence post, so we can be independent of trees and we don't have to, we can put it wherever we want in the field. So what you're going to do with this is take your tape measure and your Sharpie, and you're going to want to go as straight back from the opening as you can. So the opening is on the side facing away, and I'm going to go straight back, and then I'm going to go, and we figured about 12 inches down is a pretty good number. I'm going to go 12 inches down and mark that, and then all I'm going to do is take the U-bolt, and I mean, this is what you're putting in there, so you might as well use this as your measuring device. So you put one end right on, you know, center it up on that hole, on that dot you made, and then just kind of make another one, same height. So that'll give you your distance across. Then all we're gonna do after that is you got your drill with your 5/16 drill bit. We're just gonna drill out the holes quick. Here's one. There's another one. Clean them up a little bit. One thing that helps a lot is if you put your drill bit in there, just kind of rock it around, you know, so you get enough room in there for those to fit, because it is going into a curved surface. So do that to each one, and then just clean them up. If you want, you can come across it with your sandpaper, get most of the burrs and stuff off. And then, so when you get the U-bolt, it'll have 2 regular nuts and then this kind of brace on there. So what we did is we took the regular nuts and slid them all the way to the end, and then we'll put our brace on, and then we'll have our lock nuts go on the inside. So we'll get this in here. You can see it's kind of tight, so I'm going to drill the one hole out a little bit more. Still a little bit tight on that side. It's all kind of trial and error. There's no scientific way of doing it. See how that goes. I can see it's through, it's just a little hung up. I'm just going to go a little bit wider. Let's hope that does it. You guys are all getting bored watching me drill holes over and over. Okay, there it is. Okay, so you get that in, then you got your 2 lock nuts. And like I said earlier, we went all stainless with this just because it's going to be out in the elements. You're going to want to make sure you kind of just go in and rub the threads a little bit, just so you can, you know, you're not trying to crank over that plastic. Just clear them out. Here's one. And there's the other. So same thing with the eye bolt on top. Is there's probably about 2.5 inches on the inside. I'm not going to go into all the, you know, tightening down on that, but you'll want to tighten that down. And then if you're going to use one of these fence posts, you don't want to go all the way out with these nuts. You're going to want to spin them back about 4 or 5 spins each, and then tighten it down. Just so you can slide it over, but it's with the cap that you run into problems. So to get the cap to fit right, we just spun it out a little bit, and then that gave it the spacing. I mean, it's not tight on there, but it's stable. It's not going to blow over. Nothing's going to knock it over. Especially, you know, the post is a foot in the ground. So we're getting close to the end here. All you're going to really do now, you got your cap, and what we do is just put it on, and you're going to paint it. You can see one thing that helps while you're kind of getting the tension right, you know, while you're sanding this, is if you just put your boot in here and you can pull it up. But you can see this one I got sanded pretty well, so it comes off fairly easily. That's what you're going to want, especially if, you know, you got this full of corn. That's going to help weigh it down too, and on the post, it's going to be able to come out good. So there it is. You got that. All you're going to need to do is paint it. We got brown and green and tan paint. The couple tips I'd say for painting is if you take like some pine needles or some maple leaves or something and lay them on here. We used like a little piece of a cedar leaf and just laid it on there and sprayed over it. That gives it a really good texture, so it's not just all these lines and everything. So a couple logistic things about it. So this bag over here, feed, like I said earlier, that's a 50-pound bag. We picked it up for just under $7. We got that at Menards, where we got all the rest of the stuff. Some other things. So like I said, with a 10-foot chunk, you can get about three. You can get about 3 of these if you cut them at about. If you cut the tube at the 38 1/4, and then so adding up all the different materials and stuff, the price on these comes out to just under 40 bucks, which kind of sounds expensive, but you know, we went with a 6-inch pipe, which is a really big pipe. We wanted to be able to fit a lot of corn in there. We wanted the deer to be able to eat out of there easily. And then we also went with the stainless hardware. If you didn't go with that, that'd save you some money, but I would recommend it. This one here we filled up, and out of a 50-pound bag, we fit 35 pounds of corn in here. I've seen the 4-inch feeders, and I'm not sure how much those hold, but I'd say they'd probably hold around 20-25 pounds. So if you're gonna put these out somewhere where you can't check them very often, I'd definitely go with the 6-inch. It's gonna be bulkier getting it to wherever you're getting it to, but once it's there, I mean, it's PVC and stainless steel. It's not gonna deteriorate, you know, it's gonna last for a long time. So yeah, and then you can just, you know, dump a couple gallons of corn in there every time. The total height of it is right around 51 inches, you know, with the base and the cap and everything. So that's about that. We're gonna go put these out in the field, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to set them up and different things we found for doing, you know, putting the corn in there. So we're gonna go put these out in the field, and we'll be right back with you guys. Alright guys, so before we put this out, I figured we're gonna have to paint it anyway, so we might as well film it and show you guys. There's a couple things that we do, especially when we're painting on plastic with spray paint, that helps. So there's the same sheet of sandpaper that I had to go around the inside of the cap. All you're gonna do with this is just go along the whole tube, and just all you're doing is roughing up the surface, so the paint has a little bit better surface to stick to. The other thing is, if there's any static electricity in the tube, getting rid of the just roughing up the outside will get rid of that. So, doesn't take long, you know, just go over all the surfaces, make sure you get, you know, the cap and the base will be the big thing, because they're a little bit different type of plastic. They're a little bit more of a glossy plastic. Just make sure you rough them up all the way around. You know, this step doesn't take long for what it is, and it really helps the paint adhere. Okay, so there you go. That's all that takes. Your lid will come off, you know, when you sanded it. And then what we do is we got a little bit of cedar here. You can also use like your tall grasses, like I got behind me. You can use pine needles, whatever you're gonna do. What we do is we got our brown, and for the 3 tubes we got 2 cans of brown. So the brown is gonna be kind of your base color, and with this green tube it helps a lot. But you're just gonna kind of, you know, paint over it. No, it doesn't have to look good because you're going for camouflage. So paint over most of that surface. And then once you get your base on, I'm going to come back with the tan color. And if you've ever painted anything for waterfowl hunting, this is also a really good method because it'll look like the cattails in the grass. I'm going to come back with a khaki color, and I'm just going to kind of do lines across it. And when I do the lines, I'm getting pretty close, just because I want them to be a solid looking line. So you do your lines, you know, there's no method to it, just go wherever. And then I'll come back with the darker green color and my little piece of tree here, whatever you decide to use, whether it's cedar, pine, you can get some maple or oak leaves, whatever you want. And then all I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to lay it on the surface and paint over it. And that'll give it the outline of the leaves. It'll look really good. I'll try and show you one down here to see if you can see it better. You can see, you know, I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but the detailed outline that gives it. And then backed with the brown and the tan, it just kind of, it gives it a better dimension as far as camouflage goes. So yeah, just use those couple of techniques. Go over the whole thing. I'll also I'll paint over the hardware. I'll do a little bit on the inside of here, but I won't go way down in because it'll be filled with corn. It's not going to matter. But I will go around the edge just because that will be showing. So yeah, if you guys just use those couple of simple techniques, the sanding it and then the use of the tree really helps a lot. So we're going to finish painting this up, and then we'll meet back with you guys in the field. Alright, so we got our corn here and our feeder and our fence post, and we're out on the back 40, and we have a camera set up on a tree right over there, and we've had some deer hit this block. So we're gonna set it right here and just see what kind of pictures we're getting. So first things first, obviously drive your stake in. And the same thing, you know, if you were gonna not use a stake and hook it up to a tree, you know, a tree this size would do the job. So we got our stake in the ground, and we're just gonna go right around that loop. I'm gonna take the lid off before I do this. We're just gonna slide it over, go like that. So our opening is kind of facing towards our camera a little bit, and then the ground's pretty soft here, so I didn't have to hammer it in. But so like I said before, this thing will hold about 35 pounds of corn from the figuring we did. So, you know, you're not gonna have to, you know, do maintenance on them and refill them as much. But if you come right in here and you look in the bottom of there, you can see that drain that we put in, and that's going to be helpful for draining water out. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, you're going to have a lot of corn dump out of there, this and that and the other thing. Well, you don't really. We tested it, and we contemplated putting, you know, a piece of hardware cloth or some sort of screen in there, but after, you know, testing it and whatever else, the amount of corn that dropped out of there was very little. It was, you know, a handful. So that's not something you should worry about. But you can notice the top here I didn't paint. That's simply because one, it's going to be covered by the lid, and two, it's going to be hard to get the lid on and off if you got paint there. So, I mean, the rest is pretty simple. So that's about 25 pounds of corn. I got another bucket here that I'll add, and that's filled to right about here. So this full bucket won't fit in there, but yeah, it's right to about there. So I mean, that's a lot of corn, and you can see it float. It comes out here nicely, and you know, when the deer's eating, you can see it. I mean, no time it fills back up. So yeah, so that's our deer feeder, how we did it. You know, if you guys have any questions, comments, or you want to tell me how bad of a job I did on my video, go ahead and do that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go check us out on Facebook for MN Outdoor Boys. I'm Chris Kluzak. Be safe and get outdoors.
I can see the sweet sun pouring down.